Hi everyone, and look who I've got with me tonight. I have Fluffy on the left side, trying to keep him from muffling my microphone, and the kitties start out, they always like to move around. But I wanted you to see, and here's Dear Chocolate over here. They're brothers, as you guys know, and I love them so much. And you can see that they are without that big bushy Himalayan hair, but they're getting just perfect for the March equinox, when I hope that we will be at 175,000 subscribers at this Earthfiles YouTube channel. We keep climbing, and they will be just perfect in their hair, not too short, not too long, to get them through the summer to the fall, and we'll have to do it again. But for those of you who have the long-haired cats, you know that you have to go through that periodically, and that's why these adorable boys look sort of like kittens restored. And I'm so glad that they're here tonight, and I'm so glad that you're here. And let's start tonight with the most exciting event in our solar system last week on Thursday, February 18th, the landing of the NASA Mars Perseverance in the red planet's Jezero Crater. The director of NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, Michael Watkins, said, quote, "Now we finally have a front row view to what we call the 7 minutes of terror for the landing on Mars," close quote. After nearly 7 months traveling some 130 million miles from Earth to Mars, NASA's rover Perseverance headed toward that square area where the 30-mile diameter Jezero Crater is in the northern hemisphere of Mars, northwest of Gale Crater, and beyond where the Spirit rover began exploring back in 2004. Scientists see clay minerals in Jezero Crater that likely were carried there by water that turned the crater into a lake at some time in the past 3 billion years when Mars had a lot of water. And that's why Perseverance will look for microbial life there. This image of Jezero Crater shows various colored spectral data from clays altered by water. If Perseverance finds microbial life evidence there, it will gather and store the samples on the Perseverance rover. For the first time in history, NASA is hoping to return samples from the Perseverance mission back to Earth by another future Mars mission. During the landing, there were 5 cameras that were taking video and 2 on the back of the capsule holding the rover, 1 on the sky crane that acted as a jetpack to lower the rover, its final 2,000 meters to the surface, and 2 on Perseverance itself. And here we go.
We are starting the straighten up and fly right maneuver, where the spacecraft will jettison the entry balance masses in preparation for parachute deploy and to roll over to give the radar a better look at the ground.
Applicant indicates chute deploy.
The navigation has confirmed that the parachute has deployed, and we are seeing significant deceleration in the velocity. Our current velocity is 440 meters per second at an altitude of about 12 kilometers from the surface of Mars.
Heat shield set.
Perseverance is now slowed to subsonic speeds, and the heat shield has been separated. This allows both the radar and the cameras to get their first look at the surface. Current velocity is 145 meters per second at an altitude of about 9.5 kilometers above the surface.
Nav filter converge. Velocity solution 3.3 meters per second. Altitude 7.4 kilometers.
Now has radar lock on the ground. Current velocity is about 100 meters per second, 6.6 kilometers above the surface of Mars. Perseverance is continuing to descend on the parachute. We are coming up on the initialization of terrain relative navigation, and subsequently the priming of the landing engines. Our current velocity is about 90 meters per second at an altitude of 4.2 kilometers.
OVS valid.
We have confirmation that the lander vision system has produced a valid solution and part of terrain relative navigation.
Priming.
TBA is nominal.
We have priming of the landing engines.
Back shell set.
Current velocity is 83 meters per second at about 2.6 kilometers from the surface of Mars. We have confirmation that the back shell has separated. We are currently performing the divert maneuver. Current velocity is about 75 meters per second at an altitude of about a kilometer off the surface of Mars.
TRN safety Bravo.
We have completed our terrain relative navigation. Current speed is about 30 meters per second, altitude of about 300 meters off the surface of Mars. We have started our constant velocity accordion, which means we are conducting the sky crane, about to conduct the sky crane maneuver. Sky crane maneuver has started, about 20 meters off the surface.
We're getting signals from MRO.
Tango Delta.
Touchdown confirmed. Perseverance safely on the surface of Mars, ready to begin seeking the signs of past life.
And here is the first image that Perseverance sent back to NASA after it landed safely in Jezero Crater. As Perseverance starts looking for fossilized microbial life in Jezero Crater, it has a new laser instrument on top of its head that can vaporize rocks and analyze the resulting plasma from up to about 20 feet away. Rock samples will be collected in metal tubes with the hope of eventually getting them returned to Earth. And back on our planet, the COVID pandemic news is mixed. Sadly, on Monday this week, February 22nd, President Joe Biden was joined by First Lady Jill Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris and her husband Doug Emhoff in a candlelight ceremony to honor the 500,000 Americans that have died from COVID-19. In the United States, as more vaccinations have been given, the rate of new infections has gone down 37% in the past 2 weeks. Hospitalizations are down by 31%, and deaths this date are 504,662, down 23% in the past 2 weeks. But working against those declines is a rise in infections from the very troubling variant from the UK called B117, and the highly infectious South African variant emerging in more and more places. Some scientists say that because the growing number of COVID variant strains could evade current vaccines without new boosters, there might be yet another wave of COVID coming. So Dr. Anthony Fauci and other medical experts are warning how important it is to continue to wear masks, use hand sanitizers, and keep distance through the rest of this year. And this past Sunday, February 21st, 2021, at approximately 12:19 p.m. Mountain Time, something long and cylindrical coming right toward the front window of American Airlines Flight 2292, flying at an altitude of 36,000 to 37,000 feet, surprised the pilot as the cylinder passed right over the front of the plane. The town below them at that moment was Des Moines, New Mexico, about 264 miles northeast of Albuquerque. Flight 2292 came from Cincinnati, headed for Phoenix, Arizona. At that same moment in Amarillo, Texas, 174 miles southeast of Des Moines, Stephen Douglas, Amarillo's Channel 7 head photographer, heard from his bank of 15 voice-activated scanning receiver radios, each on different frequency bands. This male voice.
Have any targets up here? We just had something go right over the top of us that, I hate to say this, looked like a long cylindrical object that almost looked like a cruise missile type of thing moving really fast that went right over the top of us.
Stephen Douglas is the founder and creator of this excellent blog spot called Deep Black Horizon, based in Amarillo, Texas. You can see his Sunday, February 21st, 2021 headline here. Quote, Intercept, American Airlines Flight 2292, reports close encounter with unknown flying object, close quote. Steve Douglas specializes in aviation, space, military, intelligence news. He immediately tried to find out what plane might have been the source of the pilot's recorded voice at the approximate 1:19 p.m. Central Standard Time on the Albuquerque Center frequency that Steve's radio scanner picked up in the 127.850 megahertz range. Steve narrowed down to American Airlines Flight 2292, flying at 36,000 to 37,000 feet altitude en route to Phoenix, Arizona. But adding to the mystery is the fact that no one answered the American Airline Flight 2292 pilot's question, "Do you have any targets up here?" referring to the cylindrical unknown flying object. Stephen Douglas began listening to radio scanners 42 years ago when he was 15 years old. He was fascinated with intercepting the voices of police and pilots in space and military, and eventually would become interested in listening to air traffic control centers to see if UFOs ever came up in discussions with pilots. After high school, Steve went on to Amarillo College to get a degree in mass communications and began working as a press photographer for the local newspaper. He evolved to television, where today he is the chief head photographer at KVII-TV, the Channel 7 ABC affiliate in Amarillo, Texas. He has also done freelance projects for Popular Science and the Discovery Channel. As his career evolved, so did his expansion of commercially available voice-activated scanning receiver radios. And now he has 15, each set to different frequency bands covering about a 500 to 700 miles range. We began our interview on Monday, February 22nd, about the puzzle of complete silence after Steve's voice-activated radio scanner recorded the American Airlines pilot.
Sunday morning, I just happened to be in here. I got a new radio in. Just after I got it installed and started recording on it for about an hour, setting all the levels, that's when I heard the call.
Have any targets up here? We just had something go right over the top of us that, I hate to say this, looked like a long cylindrical object that almost looked like a cruise missile type of thing moving really fast that went right over the top of us.
Right after I heard this, and it was actually pretty dead quiet right afterwards. It was as if the air traffic control Albuquerque Center did not know how to answer them. It was like silence. Nobody talked. I automatically record all the air traffic that my receivers can receive within probably a 500 to 700 mile area on several scanning radios that I have. And they're all fed into a computer where they're automatically recorded. And it's one of those moments that is very rare. It's one of the reasons I do what I do, is to hear stuff like that. And the silence after that was palpable. It was like everybody just shut up.
Wow.
And then chatter came back in again, back to normal. As soon as I heard the call, I let it record for a while. I didn't listen for any reply. I let it go for another 10, 15 minutes and heard nothing. No replies from air traffic control or the aircraft describing this any further. Then I made sure I saved it, and then I started recording again after that. And still for the rest of the day, no mention of it. While I'm doing that, I will call up a flight tracking software where I can, in real time, track aircraft on my computer. It's called ADSB Exchange. It's a pretty cool website. You can actually go on there and track air carriers and some military aircraft. I went there and took a screenshot of what was flying at the time. And then I started to go through it and the tape piece by piece to figure out who the call came from. I found the aircraft call sign, reported it, and it was an American Airlines aircraft going into Phoenix. And after that, I tracked it going all the way into Phoenix on the website, which shows the track, and looked at their altitude and speed and where they were when they made the call. And it's pretty easy nowadays to figure out where aircraft are, how high they are flying, where they are flying to, and where they are flying over in any given moment. It's a pretty amazing piece of technology that anybody has access to now.
And this was American Airlines Flight 2292, and you have it in your report. He's saying, quote, "Do you have any targets up here? We just had something go right over the top of us. Looked like a cruise missile type of thing, moving really fast right over the top of us," close quote.
Yeah, and that's very, very unusual to even phrase it that way. They kind of downplay it, but whoever this was, you can tell he was almost hesitant to report it because it seemed to him like maybe it was something military, or as I've discussed it with some military pilots that I know, that something had got off the leash or off the chain. And for an aircraft pilot to report that is a major thing because it starts a chain of events that begins when they land the aircraft. Because now the FAA has it recorded. They've made a report of an object that obviously came close to their altitude, maybe closer than they wanted it to and had no time to react. Then the FAA gets involved, and they have to start filling out reports and paperwork and witness statements and all that sort of thing. And that's a major headache for a commercial pilot. That's one of the reasons you don't hear these reports very often, is because they become, we really don't want to start all this red tape, and we really just want to fly to our next destination and go home. Don't say anything. And usually when they say something, they're told, well, what you saw was military, or what you saw was none of your business, or don't talk about it.
What kind of system would be in place that when an American Airlines pilot would say that something looked like a long cylindrical object, almost like a cruise missile type of thing, why could the radio go completely silent for the whole rest of the period? Is there some kind of secret block system now that is in place?
I think it's more that the flight controllers are looking at screens and talking amongst themselves, saying, did we miss something? Is there something we're supposed to know? Did we have a notice from the military that they were firing a rocket or anything? Which is probably not the case, because this aircraft was not flying near like White Sands Missile Range where they fire those things.
Right, I printed out a map because you said it was in Des Moines. That's all the way up in the far northeastern corner of New Mexico. And there is, to my knowledge, no military installations around that immediate area.
No, there's not. There's some military flight routes which the military takes. There's some refueling tracks in an area, but there's nothing that they would fire a rocket through. It's almost as if they ignored the call. It's like, we don't know how to react to this. Let's just act like it didn't happen. And then they went back to regular air traffic control. They didn't ask him what it looked like, which way it was headed. It was a very strange call indeed. You know, there are other ways they can communicate with aircraft, digital ways, which can be recorded and intercepted, but it takes a lot more technology, like what's called a ACARS system. It's almost like a texting system for aircraft. Companies like American Airlines communicate with text messages, and it's also an automatic system. It will tell the company what their fuel status is, what winds they're hitting, how the engines are operating, that whole thing. It's all automatic. But it can also be used to pass messages back and forth that aren't going over an open channel.
With all your experience of running multiple scanners and recording, have you ever had any other incident like this?
I've heard several, actually. I heard an aircraft not too long ago talk about what he thought was a SpaceX launch. And he said, wow, isn't that pretty? That must be the SpaceX launch. He saw something streaking across the sky, and the SpaceX launch didn't happen until the next day. I was like, wow, that's really pretty. The moon is really lighting that up. That must be the SpaceX launch. SpaceX didn't launch until 24 hours later, and down by the Florida coast. It wasn't anywhere near New Mexico or Texas. It was a civilian pilot flying around. It wasn't a commercial pilot. I have 15 different scanning radios that all feed into several computers that record everything. 15 radios, and each radio probably has the capacity for 25,000 frequencies. I'm scanning military, civilian, civil aircraft. I'm scanning military satellites. I'm scanning discrete UHF military channels like would be used by Air Force One, Air Force Two, scanning just about everything I can, really. So there are a lot of guys like me who do this as a hobby.
From all of your perspective over the last 4 decades, why do you think that UFOs, other life in the universe, interacting with this planet, is always a big, huge secret, something to deny and lie about?
Well, there's the standard answer that we couldn't handle it. As mere Earthlings, we couldn't handle the disclosure, which I think is kind of not real. Well, I think we could adapt to knowing there was other life in the universe. There's also the fact that maybe we're gleaning technology. Maybe it gives us an edge over our enemies. We seem to have made a quantum leap in technology. Mm-hmm. It's very hard to walk backwards through the technology and see how we came on these eureka moments. It kept us ahead of everybody else.
And the answer is back engineering, advanced technology from the technologies retrieved in UFO crashes since the 1940s.
That's the idea that everybody has. This hobby has taken me down some very strange roads.
The next day after our interview, Fox News had this follow-up headline, quote, American Airlines not denying possible UFO spotting and says, talk to the FBI, close quote. Fox TV News reported yesterday, quote, American Airlines confirmed for Fox that the radio transmission is authentic, but did not give any further comment on the possible alien encounter. An American Airlines spokesperson gave Fox News the following statement, quote, following a debrief with our flight crew and additional information received, we can confirm this radio transmission, the one that I played for you recorded by Stephen Douglas, was from American Airlines Flight 2292 on February 21st, 2021, this most recent Sunday. For any additional questions on this, we encourage you to reach out to the FBI, close quote, they offered. Well, Fox TV News did reach out to the FBI for comment, but to date, the FBI has not responded. Fox also contacted White Sands Missile Range, which the Department of Defense calls the largest fully instrumented open-air range in the United States. But White Sands Missile Range has not responded with a comment on the cylindrical cruise missile-looking unidentified aerial object that flew so rapidly and close over the front window and above American Airlines Flight 2292 above northeastern New Mexico around 1:19 p.m. Central Time, 12:19 p.m. Mountain Time, here on Sunday, February 21st, 2021. Another brief update came today from an FAA spokesperson in reply to the Drive.com Warzone website. Quote, a pilot reported seeing an object over New Mexico shortly after noon local time on Sunday, February 21st, 2021. That would be Mountain Time. FAA air traffic controllers did not see any object in the area on their radar scopes, close quote. And that sounds to me more and more like a true historical UFO event, with pilots seeing with their human eyes the cruise missile type object come toward them fast and pass right over the top of their airliner. But FAA air traffic controllers did not see any cylindrical object in the area on their radar scopes. That combination of humans seeing UFO aerial objects with their eyes that radar does not see has been reported from the 1940s onward. And if anyone in our Earthfiles YouTube channel broadcast audience tonight has any more information, you can contact me confidentially through Proton Mail, hard U.S. mail, or FedEx. And I want to say hello to Ian in England tonight, helping with Q&A. What questions and comments do we have tonight?
Thank you, Linda. Well, first of all, I'd like to go to the people who've been in the super chat. Thank you very much. And I'm just going to list them briefly now. We have Cat Chaser, Moonbird, Ethan Burnt, Vilma Ubinas, Ginny McHugh, Carl Bittner, Flower Lioness, Kathy Murphy, and Anthony Nicoletta. I'm sorry if I've missed anyone, but thank you, everyone. I'm going straight to the questions.
Yes, Ian,
fascinating report on the aerial sighting there.
Yeah.
Do you know if pilots are officially told to keep quiet on their sightings, or is it a matter of personal preference?
Well, you know, that's what Steve Douglas and I were sort of talking around, and my question is there some sort of an official block? And I think that his answer at the first half of the interview was that the pilots don't want to go through the Q&A, the paperwork, the getting all witness comments down in some official report. And so it may be that there are some unwritten rules, or maybe there are secret private rules that pilots know that they are not to talk about UFOs, UAPs, UFOBs, and all of these different acronyms if they want to remain sort of peaceful in their life. And if they decide that they will report what they see in the true unidentified aerial phenomena or UFO category, that they do it with full knowledge that they are going to be interviewed by the FBI and possibly the CIA and possibly other agencies, and that there will be a lot of paperwork. And my question back to all of this is, when will we get past this stage where something as profound and important to the future as other life forms interacting and being based on our planet and in this solar system, if we would all be leveled with, if it were all out in the light, if everything was straightforward, then pilots would not be in the squeeze plays when they see something that they know we didn't make.
Okay. The moving on from that and what you just said there about the acknowledgement, etc. With the news this week of whistleblower Clifford Stone's passing, can you comment on Clifford Stone and whether or not you've spoken with him and anything that you can add to that?
Oh, dear Clifford Stone, God rest him wherever he is now in whatever dimension. He was a wonderful human being. I spent a good deal of time at the end of the 1980s with Clifford in his home, looking at documents, interviewing him. And he was an example of a man who had served in the military, had been exposed to UFO sightings in Germany, where they were intimidated about ever talking about what they had seen, who in his childhood described that he had had an interaction with some kind of gray being, that he then would be an example of somebody who had memories as a young person about an interaction with, and then became a person in military where he was restricted in being able to talk about UFOs or other intelligences, and eventually decided that he would try to go on the record. And when he did start trying to go on the record, in the timeline, he had a son who died. And Clifford always lived feeling that the death of his son was a retaliation for his being in the military and choosing to go on the record about UFOs and ETs. We'll never know by proof, but I remember the day that I talked with him about that, and it was so emotional that Clifford had to stop talking because he was going into sobs. And it affected him and changed him his whole life. And ironically, the loss of his son, without true proof one way or the other of what exactly happened, it was what sort of freed him to decide that he would live the rest of his life trying to tell all the rest of us the truth as he knew it. And I would honor his name and his life with praise that he chose to try to be honest in a world that still hurts truth. So wherever you are, Clifford, I hope the angels are with you and your soul is singing, and that your family know that, and that maybe your son is with you right now. God bless forever.
Linda, for that sentiment there, I think we all echo that. Do you believe, here's another question, do you believe our governments have some time travel technology? And have you ever spoken to any whistleblowers on this topic?
Yes and yes. Many times. I think, though, that the most impressive description that I've ever heard came from a physicist that I met at a conference back in 2014 that I have talked about periodically here. And that was a physicist who had been involved in the creation of what they call a time travel machine. And what was so interesting to me is that I remember we were in a conference and there were a lot of people around us, and that was the cover for his discussing UFOs and ETs and this particular discussion about the time travel. And he said, you know, people think that it's going to look like something that Hollywood does, the Stargates. He said what we built looked like a hallway that had an intersection in it. And he said there was technology that was around this, but he said, I did it myself. And the way he described it, that somehow the intersection or the hallway has to do with this whole concept that we're in some kind of a holographic universe in which essentially every bit of it is like part of the same kind of grid, and that mathematics is the key to everything, down to quarks and beyond. And that somehow it all has to do with frequencies and how you align with certain grids and the mathematical arrangements of echoing math through the universe of where you want to go, and that a hallway is part of that grid interface. And he said, my experience was simply walking to the intersection with light signals having to do with where you stop and start and stop. And he said, then you wait for a fog to evolve, and that is hyperspace. And you walk into hyperspace where everything is, the math in a metaphor goes to zero to be recalculated. And when you come out of the hyperspace, you're wherever the calculation is. And he said it was to him so vividly memorable that part of his brain knew that where he had started just 20 or 30 feet back, and now he was, from his point of view, he was at an altitude looking down on the earth, and it was covered with water. And that the dates and the timeline that they were investigating was between 2020 and 2030. It's another one of those, will the world be covered with water? And we're at 2021. So that to me was the most vivid description that I've ever heard from somebody who was a physicist involved in making it. But it's also very clear to me that the time travel, point to point, all of it, it's all information that we humans are learning from extraterrestrial biological entities who have chosen to help us, apparently, advance. It isn't something that we have done on our own. We've been doing it in collaboration with other intelligences, which makes it even weirder that the whole world isn't being told the whole truth. Okay, what about another?
Okay, Linda. With the recent news on the Pentagon testing of ET materials, are you able to comment on that at all?
Anthony Bragalia, has done some focused FOIA work and has received, as I understand it, if you boiled it down, that acknowledging that other intelligence in UFOs are probably a reality, and doing so in documents that are different than what other people have accessed for FOIA on UFOs and ETs may or may not have gotten, or have been told that they have gotten all the documents that were available. And that, as I understand it, there's now a lot of energy going into what is the background inside the Pentagon for the release of some documents in this direction and some documents in this direction by different people. And why would there be a difference? And what I would like to do, I'm doing a lot of background research on a lot of this myself. It's going to take a while. I would prefer when I talk with you guys that I'm talking with you about information that I have done firsthand interviews, or I have the documents in front of me. And so some point, I hope to do an in-depth, be an interview about all of this. But it is fascinating, isn't it? How much from so many different directions, including something that looks like a cruise missile over an airliner, and nobody is denying that it happened. Doesn't it feel like the needle is moving maybe more and more and more toward finally, at least, the truth that we're not alone in the universe? Boy, I'm so eager for that to happen, just because we're living on such a lie. It may not be that everything is hunky-dory, but I would rather live on a planet where we honored truth and the pressure of fact than to live on a planet where there was this gigantic secret that was perpetuated by tons of money and sometimes deaths and all kinds of things that are negative in order to keep in place a big lie. And that's what we've been living through the last 70 years. So I hope that all of this shuffling, let's say it's the shuffling of the paper transition, that FOIA has been used and misused, and now maybe it's going to start opening up some more doors. It's hard to tell at this point. And we've got the end of June, 180-day countdown that maybe we will get some kind of a more honest statement there too. Nick Pope, my colleague from England, we were just on Conscious Life Expo with Jimmy Church on Sunday night, and that was one of the questions. Are we going to get anything of real substance? Nick thinks they might go one notch up. I'm hoping that they really move the ball down the field, but it could be in between both of those options, or one or the other, or neither, and something yet that would be a surprise. That's what Nick Pope thinks. It'll be unexpected, and there will be a surprise that will change all of our focus. So we have a lot yet to get through between now and the end of June, and I'll just keep hanging in there with as many facts and as many interviews as I can do leading up to that. So what else have we got, Ian?
Well, a follow-on question from what you just said there, Linda. Do you think that witnesses will actually ever be called to testify before Congress at the US Capitol that we are not alone in the universe?
I guess what hits me immediately, if we are really going to sustain having a government of, by, and for the people, I mean for real, not pretend, not have a capitalistic system that is only forever going to favor those who make billions of dollars. If we really are going to be a government of, by, and for the people, with a living, not pretending, that all men and all women and all children are born equal under the eyes of God. That to go forward on this planet any further without the whole planet being introduced to all of the truths going back to Atlantis and going back to the Anunnaki and everything that has happened and what has happened on Mars and the moon. If the United States comes out of all of the difficulties that we have been in and decided that finally, with Elon Musk going off to Mars, and there already are missions on the moon, that now in the 21st century, this is the time to tell the whole world. And personally, I think it would be like a psychological, spiritual, and physical reset. I think the vast majority of people on planet Earth, in the countries, in all the different countries, already think that it's crazy to say that we are alone in this universe. And so the feeling of craziness about something that has been a paradigm that has been sort of superimposed upon the evolution of Homo sapiens sapien. You are the only intelligent life form in the universe. I don't know who that served precisely, but probably beings that came here and pretended to be gods and had humans get down on their knees to pretend gods, not the true divine. Maybe it served them. But if we're going to survive ourselves, if we're going to survive the unstable Earth, if we're going to survive trying to turn ourselves into a two-planet civilization, Mars and Earth, and other moons going out into the solar system and mine the asteroid belt, all of that is going to start happening. What could be healthier, truly healthier, to the entire human family relationship than for all of the governments, all of the religions, all of the power brokers to finally say, we're all going to go on to the same square. We're all going to be told the same truth. We're all going to evolve from a crucial day in a crucial year going forward from now on, and we will look back at the 5,000 years going back from the 20th century back as a very peculiar period of testing, experimentation, genetic manipulation that grew out of 3 competing extraterrestrial civilizations that had been using planet Earth for 270 million years as a laboratory. And then maybe we, the human family, finally moved onto a square of the same truth. We would look at each other with the agape love that the Greeks always talked about. That if we loved each other's soul, if we loved each other as we would a mother, a father, or a child, then we couldn't kill each other. And maybe out of all of this chaos, in the future, the end of war on Earth could be one of the gifts. So that to me is why it is just so important that we get past the policies of lies, the policies of denial, the policies that hurt people in their lives, like Clifford Stone, so many, because all they wanted to do was tell the truth that we're not alone in this universe, and that other intelligences, many different intelligences, have been interacting with, experimenting with, mixing and matching genes with, and terraforming this planet, having nothing to do with Homo sapiens sapient. So, in this revolutionary time, where we have to get this world past COVID, and if we can, and we do, then maybe at the other side, Nick Pope sent me a wonderful email today. He said, remember that after the different pandemics in the 1918 came the, what did they call it? It was the Roaring 20s, that's right, thanks Brad. The Roaring 20s. And out of another pandemic in Europe, there came like these releases where everybody is so frustrated with being pent up and not being able to do what they really want to do. And you get out of something that is a horrible, horrible pandemic. And then there's celebration and all kinds of evolutions. And maybe that is what's going to come. Anthony Fauci thinks that we're going to have to wear masks into 2022 to be truly safe and make sure that COVID doesn't have a chance to flare up after most everyone has had the vaccines. So maybe, hang on, keep living very carefully and putting on masks and gloves and using hand sanitizer and keeping distance for at least through 2021, and then 2022, maybe this group of all of us who get together on Wednesday nights. I was talking with Serena at Conscious Life Expo in the digital world about this. Maybe we all could try to have a big party of those who could get to England. That would be pending, that would be a symbol that COVID was finally totally under control. And we could have a huge survive COVID truth, we're not alone party in the beautiful, gorgeous fields of the Vale of Pusey. It's one of the most magical, one of the most beautiful, most wonderful places on the planet. What a fun thing that would be to do. for everybody to get together and celebrate there. So Ian, you would definitely be there at that party, wouldn't you?
Yes, it's an area I know very well, and I truly echo those sentiments that those gatherings that we've had in the past on top of hilltops in Wiltshire as the sun goes down and we have those beautiful sky watches and have the most amazing conversations in the universe. So let's all hope we can soon get together and share our experiences again. Okay, moving on. I've got another question for you here, Linda. It's a straightforward question. Linda, do you meditate, and does meditation help with the contact experience?
In about 1985 to 6, I think there were forces that wanted to eliminate me. And I had several really, really dear friends who did various kinds of meditation. And one of them called me up and said, we'd like to come and talk with you because we were very concerned. They had been doing various kinds of meditations that I didn't know that they were focused on me. And when we all got together, they said, you are under threat. We are very concerned about you. And the person that they were working with was from India. And they had done some, I think it would probably be in the category of remote viewing. And they were genuinely worried about whether I was going to survive what was happening, because I kept going with animal mutilations and human abductions and government cover-up and all of that after the HBO project. And they said, what we would like to do is teach you a meditation. And probably they spent a week or two. And I started doing that meditation. And after a while, I so liked the feeling of, it was like protecting my very soul by doing the meditation. And I did it every day. And after a while, maybe 2, 3, 4 months of really settling into it, I began to realize that I could pose a question in my mind and go into meditation, and then I would see pictures and I would see sort of answers. And it became very clear that there was a definite threat. And I'm not going to go into all the things that happened in 85 to 86, but it was really something. And after a while, and I would hope that any of you who went into whatever form of meditation that you would choose, that if you do it on an absolute daily basis, meaning absolute, meaning you do it every day, it doesn't have to be at the same time, but you do it every day, and you begin to get comfortable with this dialogue that I think is going on between your soul, the universe, frequencies. You can pick up on all kinds of things. And pretty soon, it's like breathing in light. It makes you stronger. You feel stronger inside. You do not feel so vulnerable. And once that starts, once you're in something that gives you internal strength, I think that's one of the best things that can happen. And the more internal strength, then you can put one foot in front of the other and keep going. And after a while, all of those, both physical in your face and behind the scenes threats, they just seem to fade away. So I truly think that meditation, which my definition, it's not an ism, It is that you find whatever works for you, a repeated syllable, staring into a candle, a crystal, whatever it is that you like. It's going inside. It takes you deep inside. And that's where you can strengthen, I think, your soul. So that's my experience with meditation. And today, in 2021, for the last probably 15 years, I transitioned from the original meditation into breathing in the sunlight. And I do it every day. And I can be very tired from editing or write. Like sometimes I will sit at the computer and edit for 8 hours. I don't even know 8 hours have gone. And I've been in the same place, same point. And I get up and it's wow. And I go outside, even in the winter, we have sun a lot here. But I go outside and I face the sun and I have words and I breathe in the sunlight and I see the photons entering. And to me, the key is marrying up your RNA and your DNA in your mind's eye. Imagine your whole body made up of RNA and DNA, and that you breathe in the actual photons that are coming at 186,000 miles a second constantly from the sun in the day, and you see it come in and fill you up. And when you start doing that, you can go from 8 hours of editing and do that for 15 minutes and you just feel fantastic. So I've always been hesitant to, I would never want people to think that any of this was an ism. I hope that's translating correctly. That when you start experimenting with your own way to breathe, expand yourself, if you want to interact with light, you will find your way. That's why I'm saying, to me, it's not locked in, there's no rules, but there's a concept of trying to breathe in the sunlight to restore your soul, to restore your body, to restore your spirit, restore your mind. And when you get that interaction with the sunlight, it's just, I don't know, I just love it. And all I can do is say that I hope some of you will try, and that I'm not trying in any way, shape, or form to put myself in the position of saying, this is what I meant. It's not an ism. It is a collaboration with the force of light in this incredible universe that you can feel it. You can feel it energize your soul. And once you feel it, it's strengthening, and it's like the Nag Hammadi book, the thought that dwells in the light. That's what you make a connection with. The thought that dwells in the light. I hope that for all of you. I love all of you. I love your letters. I love your sending illustrations. I'm so glad that we are all getting together on these Wednesday nights. You teach me so much. And I hope that we can keep growing to get to that 175,000 subscriber level. It's now less than a month away. Whatever we get to on the March equinox, that will be fantastic. And I look forward to seeing you next week as we go into this journey of exploring what is truly in this universe beyond the earth and what is here on this planet that we still have so much to discover. I love you guys. See you next week.
Turn on closed captions for YouTube videos by clicking the white CC button on the lower right. The default language for Linda's videos is English. If you would like to see the captions in another language, click on the white settings button next to the CC button. Select Subtitles CC and then select Auto Translate. Select a language and the captions will now appear in that language.
Sort of gone through, and they will hold their heads. I never had a cat do that before. And they'll pull against the comb, helping me get out snarls. And I think it's the best they've ever been.